Hello and welcome to the second part in our GameMaker Studio tutorials. In our previous video we had a look at creating our first platformer using our drag and drop option within GameMaker Studio 1.4. In this tutorial what we're going to do is we're going to explore using scripting, which is GameMaker's second, an optional method for you to be able to program within it. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and open up GameMaker. So once you open up, you're going to be welcomed by the Welcome tab here. What we're going to do is we're going to go over to the New tab, and then just down here, I'm going to keep it on the desktop, but I'm just going to call this Advanced Platformer. And then I'm going to go ahead and press Create. Then eventually GameMaker will then open up and you'll get a screen very much like this. So, just as before, we've got all our icons up the top here for us to decide what we'd like to create. So just like before, I'm going to go ahead and create a sprite. I'm going to call this SPR_hero. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go and make this 64 by 64. Press OK. And then I'm going to go ahead and make this a nice teal blue colour. And if you saw in the previous video, if we're going to make sure that we're going to get some precise collision checking done within a video game, we want to ensure that we centre all of our objects. And then I'm just going to go ahead and then follow the same method just as before. And this time I'm going to call it SPR_wall. Again, I'm going to make this 64 by 64. And I'm going to make this... We're going to go for a nice orange colour this time. Go for pale orange. And add that in there. And just before, we're going to centre our object. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to set up two objects for this tutorial. The first one is going to be called obj_wall. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to choose the wall sprite, and then I'm going to ensure that I tick the solid box. So that way that it is a solid object so nothing can pass through it. And then I'm going to press OK. Second thing I'm going to do is then create my other object, and this time I'm going to call it obj_hero. And just as before, I'm going to go and press the hero sprite and make it a solid once more. Now, obviously, looking at our previous tutorial, we could see that we have all of our drag and drop options down here. So we've got the moving in different directions, we've got moving the horizontal or vertical speed, and setting up gravity. Difference is this time we're going to be using a couple of different methods on how to create a more detailed and precise platformer. So to start off with, I'm going to go down here and I'm going to press the Add Event button, and I'm going to choose the Create Event. So in order for us to set up our platformer, we want to be able to create our own variables. Now, instead of using GameMaker's own variables, if we create our own, we can set our own values to them. For example, if we go over here to the Control tab, what we're going to do here is we've got questions, other, code, and variables. So to ensure that we get the correct one that we need, we're going to go ahead and we're going to drag in the first of the codes, which says execute code. Now you can see the font is quite small if I start typing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and increase the size by pressing F8. So if you press F7 or F8, you can increase or decrease the size. So I'm going to go ahead and make this relatively big. Now at the moment, if I were to just go ahead and press the green tick, you'll see that our code is just called execute piece of code, which is the name of the function that we're carrying out here. But to help with your organising, if we go ahead and we press 3 forward slashes, it turns green. This will allow us to actually change the name of our script. So I'm going to call this one initialize variables. But if I press the green tick, you'll see that the name has been changed here for our script. So the first of our variables I'm going to create is going to be called grav. So immediately a few things appear when doing this. Obviously grav is not a real word. Gravity is. Now it's the gravity that GameMaker is looking for. So if we're creating our very first variables, it's going to appear as an error, which you can see here on the left hand side as a big block of red. If I were to type gravity and equal it to 0, our variable will become red. However, gravity in itself, it becoming red, comes with its own comes with their own value, as it's built into GameMaker's library already. But what we want to do is we want to go ahead and create our own variable. So we're going to call it grav, but until we give our made up variable a value, it's going to stay as an error. So for this, I'm going to set the gravity to equal 0.2. And immediately, as soon as we've given ourselves a value, which is highlighted in red, the error has gone. So we've now added our variable into GameMaker's library. Another cool technique to remember is, if you want to be able to end lines of code, as if we were going to write a book, we would press a full stop to end our sentence. Very similarly, in GameMaker, if we press this semicolon, it shows GameMaker that we are ending that line of code. For our next variable, we're going to write HSP. Now HSP is actually abbreviated from HSpeed. But once again, we don't want to use GameMaker's own variable, we want to use our own. So we're going to leave this to HSP equals 0. And same again, we're going to go VSP equals 0. And don't forget to put your semicolons at the end as well. And then I'm going to put jump speed. And this is going to be how quickly our player is going to jump. And I think we don't want to go too strong, we don't want to go too lightly, so we have a bit of feel and a bit of weight to our character. So I'm going to go and I'm going to put 7 in for now. And the last one is move speed. And this is how quickly we want our player to move. So I think for now, we're just going to leave this as 4. If afterwards we've completed this tutorial and you find that you want to change and manipulate the move and the jump speed, all you have to do is come back to this script here and change the value depending on how quickly that you want your player to jump or to move. But that's it for our variable so far. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to press the green tick. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to go and set up a step event. So down here at your add event, I'm going to click on add event, step, and we don't want to do a begin step or an end step. So this allows us for us to decide what happens at the start of the second or at the end of the second. So I'm just going to choose a normal step. And just as before, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to drag in another execute code. But this time, I'm going to call this get the player's input. As you saw probably in our last video, we chose which event is linked to which keyboard button. For example, we go add event keyboard key right. We then chose the expression that we wanted to type in, which would be hspeed is greater than -5. We would then move to the right. This time we're going to set up our own functions to make it easier to be able to control our player. For example, I'm going to call this key underscore right, and just as before, as you can see here on the left hand side, it's giving us an error because key underscore right doesn't exist within GameMaker's library. So what we're going to do is we're going to add it into there. And I'm going to say equals keyboard underscore check, and in brackets I'm going to decide what button is going to go with this, and obviously it's going to be the right keyboard letter. So to do this, in brackets I'm going to put VK underscore. Now VK means virtual keyboard, and as you see on your keyboard, this relates to all of the buttons such as shift, tab, your arrow keys, your space bar, your enter, your backspace. If we wanted to do numbers, then we would specify if it's a number, or if it was going to be a mouse button, it would be MB underscore left. But for us, we're going to leave this as VK underscore right. I'm going to close off the bracket and then end the line of code with a semicolon. So we've got our right movement done and completed. Next thing, we're going to do key underscore left. But this time, if you remember back to our previous video, if we're moving right, we're heading positively. If we're moving left, we're going negatively. So we're going to ensure that we have minus keyboard underscore check, and in brackets our virtual keyboard underscore left, close brackets, and end that line of code. The next thing we'll do is we're going to then incorporate our jumping. So obviously you guessed it, key underscore jump is equal to, so keyboard underscore check underscore pressed. Now the difference between using keyboard check and keyboard pressed, keyboard check will allow you to hold down the keyboard and that function here continuously going, moving either left, right or left. But if we're using keyboard underscore check underscore pressed, it allows us to press it once rather than it constantly jumping up and we've got an infinite jump. And this time in brackets I'm going to go VK underscore space and close it off with a bracket and your semicolon. So we've started to get the movement in there. We've started to get the input in from our player. So what happens, or what buttons we are going to use for our movement. So a couple of lines down, as we saw before up here, if we use 3 forward slashes at the start of a script, it allows us to change the name of our script. If you use 2 forward slashes, it allows you to add a note in there. But 1 forward slash will mean divide. So if we're going to be halving something, or if we're going to be saying 1/3 of the screen. So now on line 6, I'm going to make a note and I'm going to call this react to inputs. Okay. And I'm going to start this off with a new variable and we're going to call this move. But move is going to equal key left plus key right. To put it simply, what this means is rather than us constantly writing out key left and key right, if we make it so move is equal to these, all we have to do now is, if we ever say the term move, it's going to refer back to these functions. This is simply just to try and make it easier and rather than just typing it out so on however many times. So line 8, we're going to say our horizontal speed is going to be our movement times, or in this case it'll be an asterisk, the move speed variable that we created in our create event. And to finish this off, we're going to say if our vertical speed is less than 10, our vertical speed is going to be plus equals our gravity variable that we created. This is quite a bit of scripting we've done so far, so please do ensure that you're going back and you're double checking all of your spelling and you're making sure that you have spelt your, or typed your variables correctly. The last thing you want to do is create a variable in your create event and then come to your scripting and then type it incorrectly. GameMaker will work out that this, if I had written my variable to say gravy, for example, and I come here and I forget the Y, it's not going to link up. So you want to make sure that whatever variable you're creating, you spell it correctly later on. So now what we're going to do, on line 11, I'm going to type if and place underscore meeting in brackets. So place meeting is simply the contact between one object and another. In this case, we're going to say, in brackets again, x, comma, y, plus 1, comma, obj underscore wall. So we're saying what happens when we come into contact with a particular object. And in this case, we've already created our object, wall. So this time we want to make sure that what happens when we come into contact with that wall object. Now, as you can see, I've got all my brackets. They've all been balanced out, but I've still got an error. What this means is, as an if statement needs curly brackets. So this is simply to say, if we're going to do something, what is going to be the result? And in this case, if our player comes into contact with the wall object on the y-axis, this is going to be the end result. So in this case, I'm going to put VSP equals key underscore jump times minus jump speed. And you can go ahead and you can put a semicolon in the end there as well. So we're just going to jump down to line 60 and we're going to break it up a little bit. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to go and add in our collisions. So once again, go ahead and add in another note, and I'm going to call this horizontal collision. So this is going to be really straightforward. All we're going to do is we're going to say, once again, if, and in brackets, place underscore meeting, and if we come into contact with our x along with our h speed, comma y, comma obj underscore wall, and make sure that you're balancing off our brackets as well here. If you ever get stuck at how many brackets you have and haven't done, if you go ahead and click on one of the brackets, they'll highlight in blue where that matching bracket can be found. So, next line we're going to have an if statement, so we're going to do one curly bracket, and then I'm going to do another line of code which is going to be while, and in brackets, an exclamation mark, place underscore meeting. Now an exclamation mark simply means not. So while we're not in contact with our particular object, this will be the end result. So we're going to say while, and in brackets, we're not place meeting, in another set of brackets, x plus sign, and in brackets again, HSP, comma, y, comma, obj underscore wall, two brackets once again. And as we're doing a while statement, they also require curly brackets. I'm going to say x plus equals sign, in brackets, HSP. I'm going to finish that off with a semicolon there. But we're not fully balanced just yet. So here on line 23, I'm just going to finish off by saying HSP equals 0. Enter onto a new line, close it off with a curly bracket, and on line 25 I'm just going to say x plus equals HSP, and that's it. So we now officially have our horizontal collision. And as you guessed it, if we're coming into contact with our wall object on the horizontal axis or on the x-axis, we now want to be able to say what happens when we come into it on the vertical axis, which is the y. So to do this, I'm going to make another note. I'm going to call this vertical collision. So I'll enter a few lines down. And this time I'm going to say if, in brackets, place underscore meeting, and in brackets, x, comma, y plus VSP, comma, obj underscore wall, and two brackets once again, curly brackets, and on line 30 I'm going to type while, open brackets, I'm not place meeting, x, comma, y plus sign, and this time VSP is going to go into brackets, comma, obj underscore wall. We're going to do y plus equals sign, and again VSP in brackets, and you can go and pop a semicolon to finish that line up as well. I'm going to say VSP equals 0, and then y plus equals VSP. And that should be it. So do give yourself a moment just to have a quick look back, make sure you've got everything balanced, that where the wall object has been spelt correctly, and it should be highlighted in red. Make sure that you've got the VSPs the correct way round. I'm going to remove that space. Oh, no. There. So that looks like we're more or less there. So the next thing we're going to do So going to go up here and I'm just going to go and tick to say that I've completed that script now. And just as before, we've looked into this already in our previous episode, so if you're not sure about how to create a level, do go back and go and check out our basic platformer tutorial. I'm now going to go ahead and create a room. Just going to zoom out, I'm going to toggle my grid off. I'm going to call this level 1. I'm going to choose a khaki green, forest green colour, I think. This time, I'll make that full screen, drag that in. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put some wall objects in there. Build a little bit of a level just for our player to be able to walk around on. And then go ahead and drag one hero object in there. So once you're happy with your level, go ahead and press the green tick. If you're happy and you haven't got any errors, we're going to go ahead and run our game. So depending on how much you do for the first time, it might take a little while for it to build. And now we can see that we have successfully built our first platformer. So at the moment we only have one singular jump, but we're going to do double jump in a later tutorial. So that's it. We've got precise collision checking, and we've now completed our first lesson on how to do advanced programming within GameMaker. The great thing is as well with this project, you're able to add so many different things to it. So in future tutorials, what we're going to cover is embedding controller support into it, as well as looking at particle systems, as well as advanced movement and double jump in there as well. So I hope you've enjoyed looking through this tutorial. I hope you've been able to learn how to use your scripting for the first time. I hope you've enjoyed it, and we look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you very much.